Good morning. Today is December the 8th. I'm going to try and get through this without choking and gagging, as my husband would say. I've been having a cold for about a week, but today's lesson is so good. It's called The Stairway of God, and it's from back in Genesis chapter 28, starting at verse 10. It says, Jacob left Beersheba and traveled toward Haran. At sundown, he arrived at a good place to set up camp and stopped there for the night. Jacob found a stone to rest his head against and lay down to sleep. Can you imagine a stone for your pillow? And as he slept, he dreamed of a stairway that reached from the earth up to the heaven. And he saw the angels of God going up and down the stairway. And at the top of the stairway stood the Lord. And he said, I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham and the God of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on belongs to you. I am giving it to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They will spread out in all directions, to the west, to the east, to the north and the south, and all the families of earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. And what's more, I am with you, and I will protect you wherever you go. One day I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have finished giving you everything I have promised you. And then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. Again, can you imagine how tired Jacob must have been in order to sleep with his head on a pillow? I don't know about you, but with my pillows have to be just right, don't they, in order to sleep? And you push and you prod and you fluff and you get it just right to where it's comfortable. A pillow or a stone doesn't shift. I can't even imagine how tired he was, how fearful he must have been, exhausted, all alone, running to find security somewhere. Ann Voskamp writes, you can feel it in your bones sometimes when you stop for a moment. Like life is this stairway that you just never stop climbing. This ladder that goes on forever without end. I like that, because day after day, we clean, we cook, we take care of our kids or our grandkids. We take care of our husbands if we're fortunate to have one. The chores never come to an end, do they? Just go on and on. I like the saying, I dusted the other day, but it just came back, and I'm never falling for that trick again. I wish we could say that, but you just do it over and over. And all of these to-do lists, they feel like rungs on a never-ending ladder. You just never get done. You're always going on and on. Sometimes you're just the most tired. Anne says, I missed part of it. Anne says, like all your rest feels like lying down on one unforgiving stone. And sometimes you're just the most tired of trying to be strong. I like that. Think about that. Sometimes you're the most tired of just trying to be strong. We feel like we have to do this and that, and we have to be this and that in order to reach our dreams. The dream that does come true, the most amazing dream, is that in reality, spiritually, there are no ladders to climb, because Christ came down one in order to get you. I love that. In John chapter 1, verse 51, Jesus said, I tell you the truth. You will see all heaven open and the angels of God going up and down on the Son of Man, the one who is the stairway between heaven and earth. So if we want to get to heaven, it's not a matter of us pulling ourselves, performing task after task. Jesus is the stairway. We just have faith in him, and he takes us up. It says Jesus came down here to get us, and it's through him and it's by him that we get to heaven. And that's why Paul says our salvation is not by works. There's nothing we can do in and of ourselves in order to earn our salvation. It's all about having faith, accepting by faith that Christ's death on the cross paid that price, bore the punishment that our sins deserved. It satisfied the requirement of God that without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. So there has to be a punishment, a price paid. There has to be that shedding of blood. But if we accept the fact that Jesus shed his blood for us, then we don't have to shed our blood later on, spiritually. Jesus came as a baby so that he could die as a sacrificial lamb. He shed his blood. He became the stairway by which we can go to heaven. Jesus said that he is the way, the truth, and the life. Other religions or philosophies may teach steps that you have to take to better yourselves, to make yourself good enough for God. But in reality, it's impossible for us to make ourselves good enough to stand before a holy God. You know, the Bible tells us that God, being holy, can't stand sin. And none of us are perfect. We have all messed up somewhere along the line. So, but Jesus is the one that makes us righteous. He took the step, he became the step so that we could stand before God. He takes our sin and he replaces it with his righteousness, his holiness. And Jesus said that he didn't come to save the righteous. You know, when you think about it, most people think, well, it's the good people that are going to get to heaven. Jesus said he didn't come to save those who think they're good. He came to save sinners. So if we think we're good enough, if we think we're righteous enough, if we think we're holy enough to get to God on our own apart from Jesus, we're not going to make it. Sometimes we get into comparing ourselves with other people. And, when we compare ourselves with other people, we may look pretty good compared to them. But that's not what gets us there. We have to compare ourselves to God, and we see how far short we fall of his holiness and his righteousness. We have to realize that we are sinners. We have failed over and over, and that even though we try to be good, right? Marty always tells me, Gloria, try to be good. Even though we try to be good, it's not just in us to be good enough. Those are the ones that Jesus came for. Those sinners, us, the Jacobs of the world. And let's think about who Jacob was. He was raised in a godly family. Isaac, his father, was one of the patriarchs. His grandfather, Abraham, was the one that God had taken out of the pagan culture and chose to bless and give the promised land to and to make his name great. So Jacob was raised right. And Jacob had a twin brother who was born just minutes before him, Esau. And Esau, being the eldest, would naturally, in the natural, receive the blessing of the birthright. He would get 2/3 of the family's property whenever Isaac died. But one day, when Esau had come home from hunting, famished, starving, Jacob had him a bowl of soup all ready and waiting. Isn't that nice of him? But not really. All Esau had to do to get that bowl of soup was to promise to give Jacob the blessing. And Esau was so hungry that he agreed to do that. He couldn't wait to fix his own bowl of soup. And it shows that Esau didn't value the blessing maybe as much as he should have. And we can look at Esau and say, how foolish that was of you to do. But we can also look at Jacob and say, where's your love for your brother? You don't care anything about him. You don't care a twit about him. You just want the blessing. You just want the birthright. And then years later, when when Isaac was failing and thought he was going to die, he called for Esau to fix him some of his favorite stew so that he could give Esau his blessing and then die. And And we know the story how Esau's mom overheard it, Jacob's mom overheard it, and but she loved Jacob, not Esau. She wanted Esau to have it. So she fixed that stew real quick and got Jacob to dress up as Esau and go in before Isaac, because Isaac couldn't see very well, the Bible tells us. And he acted like Esau. He put on Esau's clothes so he would smell like Esau. And he took that stew in and said, I'm Esau, give me your blessing. And Isaac even questioned, are you sure you don't sound like Esau? Yes, I'm Esau. And Isaac smelled him. He smelled like Esau. And so Isaac gave him Isaac gave Jacob the blessing. And the blessing was a big deal in those days. And, God had given the Abrahamic blessing to Abraham, and then God gave it to Isaac, and Isaac wanted to pass it down to who he thought it would go to, which would be his elder son Esau. But through plotting, through cunning, through lying, through deception, the blessing was given to Jacob. So we can see what kind of a person Jacob was. He wasn't very nice, was he? He cared more about money and property than he cared about his own brother. He wanted the blessing, and he was more than willing to do whatever it took to cheat his brother out of it. And because of Esau's fierce anger against him, we see now in the scripture we're studying today, Jacob had to run away from home. He's running to his uncle Laban back in Haran. And we see him here all alone, no shelter, no protection, no mommy looking out for him. In fact, he would never see his mom again. His mom would die while he was in Haran. But this is the kind of person that Jesus sent this ladder to, this vision of the ladder, the stairway. Jesus didn't send his ladder to a holy, righteous person. He sent it to a deceiver, because the truth is that it was God's plan all along for Jacob to have the blessing and the birthright. Doesn't that blow your mind? Even though we have failed so many times, God has a good plan for us. He wants to bless us. He wants to give us a good life, a good blessing. And we compare Jacob to ourselves, and I certainly hope we treat our brothers and sisters better than Jacob treated his. But we know we have the same problems that Jacob did. We covet. We lie. We put on costumes and masks sometimes and pretend we're someone that we're not. But God has a plan for us. God has a plan for you. He wants you to have the blessing and the birthright of salvation, the blessing of making it to heaven. So Jesus comes as the ladder. And then we go back to consider how tired Jacob must have been. Now, it would have been about 40 miles from where he had left, where his mom and dad were, about 40 miles to get to this place that he named Bethel, the house of God. 40 miles. When's the last time you walked 40 miles? I don't think I ever have. But we know Jacob was exhausted because, again, he used a rock for a pillow. And that's really tired. We may not be physically tired from walking, but sometimes we're just tired of trying to perform, trying to meet everybody's perceived perception, their expectations of us. Sometimes we're tired of living up to expectations that we have set for ourselves, expectations that we never seem to live up to. And Anne, our author, says, Christ comes to us like he came to Jacob. He comes to us not in spite of our failings, but precisely because of them. Ours is the God who is drawn to those who feel down. Ours is the God who is attracted to those who feel abandoned. Ours is the God who is bound to those who feel broken. God isn't as interested in how good you can make yourself as much as he's interested in having a relationship with you. He loved you enough to come down for you, to make himself the stairway that can take you up to heaven. That's love. That's holy. And that's what causes me to be overwhelmed with amazement when I think of how God saw me when I was at my very worst. and he still loved me enough to extend that ladder down to pull me up to him. And our author writes, when you are wrung out, that is the sign you've been reaching for rungs. The work at the very heart of salvation is the work of the very heart of Christmas. Simply rest. Rest in the work of Christ because he has paid it all. I love that. I love that. We don't have to try and be something that we're not. We don't have to try and be good enough. We just trust in the fact that Christ paid the price for us and he gives us his righteousness, and that's how we're good enough. So thank the Lord for his righteousness. He is the stairway. And the questions for today is number 1, when you find yourself striving, reaching, grasping for the next. When do you find yourself striving, reaching, grasping for the next rung to pull yourself closer to God? And number 2, how would your perspective on the dailiness of life change if you could see that right here is holy, your everyday life? And number 3, take a moment to thank Jesus for being your ladder to heaven and to God. So I hope you have a blessed day. Thanks.